What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Adam Roa. Adam is the man behind the viral self-love video that now has over 100 million views within 15 days. Adam has an incredible story of overcoming adversity, looking life in the face, and really enjoying his journey now. He is now experiencing plant medicine and leading people into more of a spiritual journey, more of a vulnerable, conscious state. And in this episode, we really do a deep dive on his, journey from rock bottom into becoming this spiritual leader who is now truly the voice of self-love. And we do talk about self-love and how do we attain that in our life and how do we start loving ourselves enough so we're able to transmit love wherever we go. I think you guys are going to absolutely love this episode. Now, before we get into it, I want to give a shout out for Growth Now Movement Live. If you haven't gotten your tickets yet, guys, make sure you go to gnmlive.com to get them today. Obviously, the incredible lineup, which features Fabio Viviani, Albie Manzo, Sarah Centrella, Chuck Balsamo, and so many more. It is going to change your life. It is going to help you level up and reach your dreams and your goals even quicker than you could ever imagine. I cannot wait to see you guys there. gnmlive.com and grab your tickets now. Now, without further ado, I give to you Adam Roa. Adam, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely. So we're just gonna start right off with the elephant in the room, and that is 84 million views on a video gone viral. And by the way, and mind you, in 10 days, 84 million views in 10 days of something that you did on a whim, which I didn't know that until we hopped on this call before I hit record. What is that all about? So who is Adam? What's your talk all about? And let's talk about the power of this 84 million views.
Yeah. The 84 million view elephant in the room. Let's see. I did a poem. I was pulled on stage at a Kyle Cease event. Kyle is an amazing motivational speaker, and thought leader. And I was at his event, 1,400 people, and I got pulled on stage to perform a poem. And the poem is called You Are Who You've Been Looking For. And it has been cut and recut in different versions put out there. But I was contacted by Goalcast, which is this large network that puts out inspirational videos and content every single day. And they said, hey, we love your poem. Can we make a video out of it? And said, yeah, sure. And didn't think anything else of it. And a couple months later, they wrote me and said, your video will be up in 72 hours. Didn't think anything of it. All of a sudden, I log on to my social medias and there was 1,000 new, Instagram followers. The thing I was like, what happened? And I looked and we were at the time, I think we were at 11 million views in 7 or 8 hours. Unreal. And it wound up getting 24 million views in 24 hours, almost 40 something million views in 48 hours. And it has consistently gone bananas. And to me, what's most exciting about that is this poem, You Are Who You've Been Looking For, is about self-love. And I feel like it's basically letting us all see the demand for messages of love. And that is the thing that I tell everyone who says, yeah, that's amazing. And I say, yes. And think about what that means for the planet. Think about how much that means that whatever your message of love is, there is an audience for it. The world is craving. It is so hungry for this.
Yeah. And I love that you said that, because we talked right before I hit record again about your good friend Preston Smiles. And Preston says, at any given time, there's 75,000 people that need to hear your message specifically from you. And it's really about living in your truth and being able to kind of spread a message and whatever's true to you. And there are people that want to listen. Now, it's interesting because I told you, I found out about you I think I reached out to you the next day. So probably 5 days ago, I found out who you were, by watching this video, because my friend posted it and said, a great way to start off your morning. And the message of self-love is something that resonates heavily with me. And if you listen to my show, it's touched upon with almost every single guest in some way, shape, or form. And that happens organically. And part of that is because that's something that I work on and struggle with every single day. It's something that led my mom down a 20-year opioid addiction, and she struggled with every single day and couldn't figure out. But I believe that self-love is the greatest tool. And if everybody could unlock it, this world's going to be a completely better place. When you gave that talk, did you understand that, or was it a message for you?
Well, it's always a message for me. You know what I mean? I think this journey that we are all on, but I don't like to make absolutes. Maybe there are people who've gotten past it, but is just deeper levels of self-love. Because this reality that we're existing in is a mirror. It's a giant game that is reflecting back to us. So if we're walking through the world with a lens that we are inadequate, then what happens is we see everything in our experience show up and reflect to us the ways in which we're inadequate and the ways in which we're not enough. And when we walk through the world loving ourselves and being like, wow, I'm amazing, I have so much love to give, then what happens is the world reflects that back to us. And so when we realize that we're walking through a reality of mirrors, then what happens is we no longer ignore the signs of how much we do or do not love ourselves. And that means that every new experience we have will reflect back, oh, here's an area where I can love myself more. Or here's an area where I'm doing fantastic within this self-love space. And so every time I deliver that poem, and I've delivered it now, I mean, between taking my show on the road on tour and like all the different events where they want me to do that specific poem, I must have done it over 100 times easily. And every single time there's something for me in it. And I get to deliver it as if it's a reminder for myself. And I know that by doing that, people will relate to it even more deeply, because I think we're in a time and a space where people don't need to be lectured at. I don't think people need to be lectured at. That's the entire reason I created the show, The Art of Choosing Love, is because I just wanted to show people how I'm choosing to live life with love as a compass, and take from it what you will, take from it what resonates for you.
Yeah. And it's funny that even the title of your show it almost seems like it's an oxymoron to how it started, right? So like The Art of Choosing Love, and you were leaving this love relationship, right? So when people think of love, they normally think of relationship with somebody else. That potential marriage, that potential partner, whatever that looks like. So what started this journey? Because it's not like you left this relationship out of, we got in a huge fight, so the relationship's over. It was a conscious decision to leave. So how did that even begin?
Well, that's a really great question. And thank you for doing your research and knowing that it started that way, man. So what we're talking about is my YouTube show, The Art of Choosing Love. And basically, to the short of it is, I was on tour for my spoken word poetry show called Permission to Think Freely. And I was touring that through Canada and the United States. And something happened on that tour. An issue that arose on that tour with a good friend of mine who was the tour manager, and we parted ways on that tour. And it led to kind of a disagreement between my previous partner and I. And we had been together for 9.5 years at that point, 9.5 years. And we were talking about having a baby. Like we were planning on getting pregnant within the next 6 months. And for whatever reason, this disagreement, we're like, what's going on here? Because normally we find alignment, but both of us were saying, I'm in my truth, and this is coming from love. And she was saying the same thing. I'm in my truth, and this is coming from love. And that disagreement, we said, okay, let's see what's going on here. And a big part of my life and her life is plant medicine. Plant medicines like ayahuasca, for example. And we just went into ceremony and said, what's going on here? Can you help us understand why we haven't been able to find our way back to each other here? And the message that came through separately to both of us was, it's time to leave the relationship. And we did that night. We recorded a podcast and released it on my podcast, The Deep Dive, and publicly announced it. And the very next morning, I was meditating and received this really clear message. It's this funny thing when you get these messages where it's not like out of the blue where you have no experience. It kind of just happens to be something that you've been working on for 10 years. I've been in the film industry for over 10 years. And it's like, oh, I know how to do that. Great. And I brought cameras in, and we literally had cameras there on the day that we moved out and separated after 9.5 years of being together. And ever since then, there have been cameras following this journey of what it looks like to go through a breakup after 9.5 years and now be single again. And what is dating like after whatever. And now it's turned into, how to heal from sexual trauma, because that became something that I spoke about publicly for the very first time just a couple months ago, being molested at the age of 5. And yeah, basically it's like a conscious reality show in a way, and something that has a lot of personal development in it. And again, is founded on the basis of like, how do we just show people an example of what it means to live in love, and hope that people gain value from it.
Yeah, for sure. And so here you are really being followed around, and life's not easy. Like, and I think that's just the reality. And I don't care how successful, I don't care how many views, I don't care how much money. Life is really difficult. And I like the fact that you're sharing the journey of life and how difficult it can be, through this lens of heartache and pain and healing and all these things. And you had mentioned, being molested at 5 years old. And this is something is this something that you uncovered? Like, it came back to you, the memory, or is it something you held on to your whole life and just never talked about?
It's something that came back to me in in 2 separate ayahuasca ceremonies. Cause I'm that kind of person. I kind of need like the double proof.
Yeah.
But, it came back as a repressed memory at, I was about to turn 31. So, from the age of 5 to 31, I had no recollection of it at all. Wow.
And so when it came back, like there's this healing process. And the reason I want to touch on this is because I've realized, luckily, I'm blessed to say that I wasn't one, but the amount of people, specifically men who were sexually abused at a young age, who are carrying around that guilt. I mean, it's astronomical. Like, I feel like I'm one of those people, and I'm sure you can relate to this. I'm one of those people that I'll say hello, and then people just spill their whole entire life to me. And I hear it all, and this is what I hear all the time. I can't believe I'm sharing this with you. I've never shared this before. I can't tell you how many times in my life I've heard that. And, there's a lot of people who have been affected by sexual abuse. And so what are you doing? And I'm sure you're still going through it, but what are you doing now to heal yourself of that pain? Because that's gotta be awful.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much there. Obviously I'm 33 now. And so it was like 2 years ago that this came through. And the last 2 years has been a journey, and I've done a lot of things there. Like I've mentioned already, plant medicine has been a part of that. I like to do some kind of crazy, you might call it like woo woo stuff, right? Like energy healings and things like that is a big part of my experience. And then also, I did some sexual healing work, somatic sexual healing work, because what happens is that these traumas, any emotional trauma that is not moved through the system, will store in the body in some way, shape, or form. And so when you look at an animal, and this is the example I like to use, if you see like my dog has terrible separation anxiety. And so when you're getting ready to leave the house, that dog starts shaking like uncontrollably. And, when you see like a deer, that's the same thing. They shake to move that emotion, that energy through the system, and their body just does it naturally. And we can do it too. If you've ever gotten so angry or almost in a fight or something like that, afterwards you're just like shaking. That's the body processing that energy. But what happens is that so many experiences now in today's day and age, are heavy energetic experiences or emotions, but they might be gradual, like this stress about paying your rent, or this stress about finding someone that your one true love, or like whatever it is, or enough money or whatever, that stores in the system in a way that's different than what we've been used to, where like an animal goes, oh my gosh, and starts shaking. And so we're not processing the emotions in our kind of natural, healthy way by feeling them and moving them through. And so then they start to store in the system. And a lot of people can see that when it comes to like stress levels and cortisol, and how that leads to heart disease and all this stuff. But also something like, a sexual trauma at the age of 5, where my consciousness literally checked out of my body and had no recollection in order to protect myself from that. And that was because it was not present for me. There was no opportunity to process that through my system. And therefore it has literally stored in my system. And so a lot of the healing that I've been doing is allowing my system to feel it and move it through. And that has looked like a lot of different modalities. And the most recent episode 13 of The Art of Choosing Love is one of those things, where we went out to Mount Shasta and I had one of these like hippie woo woo energy healing sessions, and I filmed it and I broadcast it for the world to see, because I want people to see that there's an alternative for how to go about this. Because so many people in the Western world think, okay, I need to get on Valium or Ambien so I can sleep at night, or whatever it is that is, in my opinion, it can be very helpful to treat a symptom, but it's still treating the symptom and not the cause. And that is a huge part of big pharma in Western society that I do not align with, is this treatment of symptoms. And they are predicated on providing you relief, not necessarily healing. And I think that when we look at sexual trauma, it is a common thread that connects the majority of the world's population. Legitimately, on reported statistics, you're going to have more than half of women reported, and there's some that are not reported. So more than half of women by far. And that's actual physical trauma, not just even all of the times they've been made to feel unsafe or objectified or whatever.
Right.
And then when it comes to men, the statistics will tell you that it's going to be like 1 in 4 at the very least. And in men, it's vastly underreported. I haven't reported mine. So like, I don't even show up in that statistic, right? So with men, I believe it's at least half, if not more than half. And so in some weird way, this aspect of sexual abuse is something that connects the majority of us. And that is why I've chosen to now like publicly start speaking to it, because I want to find the common threads that connect us, because if we can find the connection point, it will lead to very powerful conversations of healing.
Why is it that you think you have this purpose to help the world? Because I think there's a lot of people who feel that way, and you're truly living it. But what do you think your reason is, feeling like you feel like you need to help heal the world?
Quite honestly, because what else would I do? I like, that's the most honest answer I can give. When I think about people's spiritual awakenings, and when I've worked with clients and stuff, I've been privy to a number of people's spiritual awakenings and been able to hold people's hands through that process. And I notice one common theme among all else, whether you wind up believing in like crazy past lives or energy or like whatever it is. At the end of the day, a spiritual awakening to me has one common thread, and that is that these people's lives become about something bigger than themselves. And it becomes about service in some way to the greater collective. And I see that in everyone who's kind of woken up to this, because they feel like they're a part of the whole. And once that happens, I don't know how I could not want to dedicate my time to it, because any time that I spend in a what I'm going to call it a selfish way, but then I'm going to redefine that entire word, but like in a selfish way, then I know that I'm not fulfilling the thing that in my soul I feel I'm a part of. And then when I say selfish, I actually think it comes back to self-love. That's why so many people have responded to this poem, because the act of loving myself causes me to love the planet more. Because the more I love myself, the more I make the association that this planet is loving me back. It's the thing it's the environment that's caused me to love myself so much. And so here I am loving myself as a result of this environment that I'm living in, that I now love even more, which means that the person I come into, that random stranger on the bus and on the street corner serving me, the barista at Starbucks or whatever it is, they're a part of this ecosystem that has allowed me to love myself so much. And therefore I have so much love for them. And that is contagious. Scientifically, love is contagious. And so that experience that we now share brings more love to them. And therefore the selfishness of learning to love myself becomes the most selfless thing that I can do.
Yeah. Wow. Again, going back to the self-love thing, I mean, I believe self-love, like you were mentioning earlier, it's a journey, right? So like, as you give this talk 100 plus times, there's still something in it for you every single time, and there's different parts, and you can go deeper in different levels of self-love and so on and so forth. But obviously you've now become, and I might be the first person to ever say this, but you've now become the voice of self-love. With this viral video, you have to think about this. Like, I've seen people sharing this video out that aren't into this type of talk. Mm-hmm. You're hitting, a group of people who haven't listened to this type of thing before. And that puts you on a different level. But the thing is, it hasn't always been like that for you. And I think that's an important part of the journey, right? So you had mentioned before I hit record that you would use, I think cocaine and heroin at the same time. Was that the right mixture?
Yeah, called speedballing.
Yeah, so you were doing speedballing. I mean, this is not something somebody who loves himself does, right? So when did this journey begin of self-love, and how did it start? Yeah,
wow. That's a really great question. Essentially, I've always been searching. That is something that I can look back for as long as I can. I've always been searching for something. And most of my life, I just didn't know what I was searching for. And that looked like through religion. I was raised Catholic. I didn't resonate, but before I gave up on Catholicism for myself, I was reading the Bible every single night in high school, praying every single night. And that's a part of my personality. I'm not just going to write something off. I'm going to say, let me try this. Let me give it my all. And I just never found that connection. So I was like, okay, this is BS. So I stopped doing that. I was searching through popularity and achievement, and I reached my holy grail in high school. I was telling this to someone, it might seem silly, but as someone who entered high school as 73 pounds and 5 feet tall, I physically felt, okay, that's not my thing. So I get to find another way to find value in myself and be valued by the world. And so it was achievement and popularity. And so my senior year of high school, I win homecoming king, and think, yes, okay, like all the movies say, I'm gonna be the kid that all the girls want, and everyone thinks is so cool, and more than the girls, my friend's hot moms are gonna want me. You know what I mean? That whole thing. And I woke up the next morning and felt so empty. More empty. I felt all the same anger and sadness and self-confusion and all of it. And on top of that, there was no holy grail that I thought would solve my problems. And so I felt lost. And I was 18 and was so blessed to have that experience, because a lot of the clients I've worked with now have become multi-millionaires. And then I go, I've gotten everything, and I'm not, what do I do now? And I said at 18, I'm not going to be that person. So I started asking those questions and started following my heart more. And that led to me moving out to Los Angeles to pursue the only thing that I ever felt like I truly loved, which is acting and performing. And then, that led to getting my self-esteem just completely wrapped up in every single audition or every single part. And I'd get a TV gig, and then that wouldn't move the needle at all. And immediately it would be, what's the next thing? And I was like, oh, what's going on? And I had the most challenging year of my life, at 29, 28, and going into 29, and everything was falling apart. And it's called a hollowing out period. And what that means is when what you're calling into your life, what you really want and your deepest desires, which may be unconscious, you may not even be consciously aware of what you're truly calling in for yourself. When out of alignment with that, the universe is always trying to give you what you're asking for. And this is something that's really important about understanding manifestation is when you declare this is what you want and you can embody it at the unconscious mind level, this is what I want. And for me, it was, I want to be making a difference on this planet in a positive way. The universe is going to do two things. It's going to give it to you, like pretty quickly. It's just going to show up, or it is going to arise all the ways in which you're not a match to that. And the more stubbornly we hold on to how we think it should be, and the more we say, but I want this thing, the more violently, the more like intensely the universe has to rip our current version of reality out of our cold, dead fingers. And so it was a really intense year where I had a business manager who literally made me print out my bank account statement and give every dollar I had to get out of a contract that I had signed in desperation. And so I started at a financial zero after all these years struggling as an actor. And then I got into a car accident where someone ran a stop sign and I was having migraines and I needed hip surgery. My car was totaled. Then a week later, I went to work because even despite having migraines, I had no money. So I needed to work. And my rental car was hit and run on the side of the road 1 week later, the exact day, exact time, basically within an hour of the original car accident. And so here I am limping out to my car with a migraine and the car is undrivable and I broke. Like wow. I had that moment you see in movies where it's like wah, 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 and all you see is tunnel vision. You can't hear people are trying to talk to you, but it's just noise. Like my mind broke and I was humbled to the point of saying, am I willing to accept that I don't actually know how to play this game? This game of life, this reality that we're living in, I had thought because so much had come easily, scholarship to college, winning homecoming king, like so much had come easily to me that I thought I had it all figured out. And I had this protection mechanism of needing to believe I had it figured out to protect my ego, because that little kid in me who didn't feel physically enough was like, okay, well, mentally, that's everything. My brain is my value. Mm. So it broke to the point of me saying, I don't have this thing figured out. So from that moment, I was now open and ready to receive new ways of doing it. And because of that, my whole life shifted. And that now becomes literally the question that I ask anyone that I'm going to work with as a client. Are you at the point that you believe you don't have it figured out? Because if you do, if you still think that you have this thing figured out, but you're sitting here telling me that there's so much that you want to create that you're not creating. I just had a conversation yesterday with someone who said, he's a billionaire, literally a billionaire. And he says, I'm not happy. I'm so unhappy. I feel dead inside. And I said, but are you at the point where you're ready to accept, despite making $1 billion, you don't have it figured out because you haven't been able to create what you truly want? And when we get to that place, when we get to that humble place, we show up as the student and say, okay, what's available to me? What's different? Now, all of a sudden, an entire new world of possibility unlocks.
Wow. There was, I'm speechless right now because it's so true. Like, you have to get to a point of surrender to say, I have and I still feel like the podcast does well. I'm building a rather successful business around it. I'm, having a live event in about 5 months. And, these are things that I visualized 2-3 years ago, and they're now coming true. And every day I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I just kind of surrendered to the idea that I'm just going to keep moving forward.
First of all, let's take a moment. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't like really, truly, like from someone who understands, like, congratulations. That's really admirable and it's doing a service to this planet. And now you're being recognized for that. And people are gaining enough value where they want to like attend your events and listen to your stuff. Like that's amazing. And congratulations.
Oh, thank you. That really means so much. I appreciate that. And, you know, sometimes it's tough for me, to celebrate those things. Because I think that, you know, going back to the whole self-love conversation is like, it's hard for me to celebrate my wins because I don't feel deserving. Right. And I think that a lot of people struggle with that kind of thing. Like, I'm certainly not the only one. So are you somebody who is able to celebrate your wins, or, you know, as you sit there and watch 84 million, I mean, by the time this thing airs, you're probably going to be over 100 million views. So are you somebody who can sit there and celebrate that? Or are you just like, okay, that's what it is?
I do my best. I do my best. I'd be lying if I was like, yeah, 100%. I think that like yesterday I had a breaking point. If I'm being fully transparent, like yesterday was a breaking point for me, because, what I've been creating with the Art of Choosing Love, I could list literally The Art of Choosing Love is this YouTube show that we are pouring so much time and energy into every single day. Then there's the whole infrastructure around that and all of this. And then there's like the Deep Dive podcast, which has gone out every week, usually twice a week for 2 years. And there's like all these different aspects, right? Coaching with clients, leading workshops, like performing, going on tour, like all of these different aspects. And every single one of them is so exciting to me. And I see the value that it gives to other people's lives and my own life. And I have gotten to a point truly where, I'm burning myself out. And I only knew that, like, it was already happening, but I got to this point because this influx of energy over the last 10 days of 84 million. And you can imagine there's probably 100 new like messages sent to me every single day from people who are telling me about how much the poem meant to them. There's self-love. People who are telling me that they're suicidal and need help. Like literally messages I get from people, can you help me? Yeah. Like it's so intense. And I was taking that over the last week. Okay. So we have all this influx of energy. How do we help these people? How do we turn this into something? How do we get this message out to whatever? I want to reach mainstream audiences. How do we use the virality of this video to get in front of like a mainstream news outlet, like CBS, NBC, CNN, like whatever, and get the conversation around the importance of self-love? How do we get that on Fox News or whatever it is? Like, how can we reach those people who need to hear this message of self-love? And so this influx of energy became a new, like, thing to work on. And instead of something to also celebrate. And yes, I recognize how amazing it is. And it feels really good in my system. And I fell into what I think is a trap that so many people fall into, which is as the energy comes back, right? We expend it. And by the laws of nature, when we expend this energy, something is going to come back. And this massive amount of energy has come back, and it immediately became more responsibility in my mind. It became more work, something that had to be done around it. And I hit a breaking point yesterday, and I was in tears. Like I was sobbing with my team, my production team that we travel with, who are also like my best friends. And I said, I am so sorry that this has somehow started to feel like work. Because I don't believe in that. I believe that when you're truly living your purpose, it won't feel like work. It comes out of a place of joy and excitement. And that's how it started. And somewhere along the line, it shifted. And so I'm, as of last night, in the process of shifting and figuring out how to reorganize, re-navigate, and move things around so that all of this, everything that we're doing, still feels like the most fun thing on the planet. Because I believe that if I don't wake up each morning in full gratitude for what I get to do, because I get to create art and impact lives for a living, and travel the world doing that. If I don't wake up in such a state of gratitude for that, something is misaligned. And that last week, since this poem has come out, I've woken up each day more and more in a feeling like, oh my gosh, there's work to be done here. And so there's a misalignment. And so as of last night, that's the deepest truth I can share with you in full transparency. So I'm working on it. I'm still learning that lesson.
No, for sure. And I love that you shared that. I appreciate you being so open about that because, you know, it's not easy. Like I have people reach out to me talking about how because of the show, they decided not to commit suicide. And it's one of those things that although I'm honored that these things happen, it is a weight on your shoulder because all of a sudden, hey, look, like and I say this openly on the show all the time, like I'm far from perfect. Like part of this journey and these people that are listening is to hear my journey, to say Justin is doing something great, but he's also working on things every single day too. And, you know, when these people reach out, you're just like, oh my God, I can't handle this. Like what? I'm just some dude in Reading, Pennsylvania. You know what I mean? Doing the best I can. So I can't fully relate on the level in which you're experiencing it now. But for sure, man, like it becomes a lot, and to be able to juggle that and continue to live in your truth is something that's super important. But you were talking about a couple things there, and there's a quote on your website, that I wanted to read and then maybe do a deep dive on, which was, every moment in our external life is reflecting back to us something that is happening internally, whether we know it or not. And I think that that's so powerful. Because until I got clear and until I started to live a life of love, I never received love. I never received acceptance. I never received successes. So can we talk a little bit more about that and how true that is to every single person on this planet?
Yeah. So I touched on this in earlier, right, where I believe that reality is just a giant mirror.
Yeah.
I believe that everything that is showing up in our reality is reflecting back to us something. And that, by the way, for people who aren't familiar with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and the study of epigenetics, epigenetics is now scientifically starting to give us the languaging for how this is actually happening. And with quantum entanglement, where literally like that is where the molecules of our makeup are all connected and responding to each other across time and space, distances that faster than the speed of light, right? Like there's so much science that is now starting to come back and talking about how this is all two ways. Our environment is impacting us 100%, and we are impacting our environment around us. And so what I believe at the deepest level is that everything is frequency based. So that means that there is the phone that I'm on, and the necklace that I'm wearing, and the hippie crystal I have in my hand right now. Like all of it has a different frequency.
Yeah.
And like attracts like. And so therefore what you're vibing at, and that's where one of the things that I love to do is bridge the gap between the esoteric worlds and languaging, and like, let's ground that into this 3D reality. And that's what makes the poem so successful, is like the message of self-love. You said I've become a voice for the face of self-love. I think that self-love is the oldest message on the planet practically. And so, but what the poem is a modern, translatable, easily understood and digestible version. And the same thing when I talk about we're all these vibrations. Yes, you are made up of 99.9% potential, empty space, electron clouds. Like, it is this thing that is there. It is not actually matter. So while you think when you touch your hand that is solid, it is actually, the majority of it is not. And when you recognize that the majority of the reality you see around you is actually just potential, what does that potential become? How does it turn into the reality that we're experiencing? And so for me, it's a matter of, what am I vibrating at? Am I in this state of feeling like I'm worthless, feeling like there's no point to all of this? Great. The reality around me will collapse into matter that reflects that, because like attracts like. And when I'm in a space of life is so amazing, every single day I wake up, there's magic happening around me. The people who show up in my life are so loving. Then that is the reality of the matter that is going to show up around me. And that's as simple as, people who are in a space of loving themselves don't want to be around people who don't love themselves. It's like toxic to the system. I don't want to be around people who are complaining all the time. I don't want to be around people who are telling me how life is pointless. Like, I don't want to be around that.
Yeah.
And so that by nature, I'm going to cut those people out of my life, consciously or unconsciously, and then surround myself with people who are way more loving and happy. And therefore, their friends are way more loving and happy. And all of a sudden, I have a network of people who are way more loving and happy. And it's that we can talk about all the ways in which it happens, from the quantum level to the energetic level to the very real. I just don't want to be around people like that. And in all of those ways, that is how we are creating this reality, and it is reflecting. So if you show up and your partner that you've been married to for 15 years, all of a sudden you have this awareness, maybe I'm creating my reality. And that partner, all of a sudden you're noticing all the ways in which they talk about you poorly. Recognize that has been happening for 15 years. And the reason that they're talking about you poorly is because there's some part of you that resonates with that. There's some part of you that accepts that, because we accept the love we think we deserve. And so when that shows up in our experience, we have now a choice to say, wow, this is showing up because there's a part of me that's still a match to that. And I either am going to choose to stay in this and accept that as my reality, which means I'm going to continue to be a match for that, or I'm going to say, this is no longer the reality I'm willing to exist in. This is no longer a match to me. And that may mean leaving this relationship. That may, at the very least, mean having a conversation and saying, I will no longer accept this as a way of being communicated to.
Yeah. So true. So true, man. Like, the thing is, I could probably talk to you for another 3 hours. So I'll declare it now. Adam will probably be a return guest on the show. But
yeah, this has been great, man. I'd be happy to.
Because we can go in so many different directions. But one thing I always like to touch on with every single person I interview, because the podcast has afforded me the opportunity to talk to successful people from all walks of life. But we also define success so differently from other people. So my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success?
My definition of success, I haven't been asked that in a while. Let me just see. My definition of success is to love like everything and everyone, to love myself, to love my what I get to do, to love the people in my life, to love, like, I know that I'm doing something right when I get into a conversation with someone who I don't particularly like, and recognize that I'm holding them with love. Like, I get in this conversation like, whoa, this person is super negative. I'm not going to have another conversation probably with this person ever again. And man, I have so much love for this person right now, and compassion. And I know that I'm doing something right when I can show up in that way. And the only way I can show up in that way is when I'm loving myself and loving my life and loving what I'm doing. And to me, that's success. Because like I said, I've talked to so many people who are outwardly successful based on the metrics that a lot of the world has, and so incredibly unhappy. And so as someone who was shut down emotionally through the sexual trauma, through how I was raised, feeling unsafe to feel and express emotion growing up, like, to now be able to feel as deeply as I do is a gift. And to wake up in gratitude is success for me. And the things that I do, the 3 things that I do regularly to ensure that, the number one most important thing that I do is meditate. Without a doubt. And a lot of people will say, well, how do I meditate? It doesn't even matter. Meditation for me is just about listening. It's just about being quiet and breathing and listening. And sometimes I even put like music on. Sometimes I'll do it with my eyes open. Sometimes I'll do it with my eyes closed and be still. Or sometimes I'll visualize what I want. Like, it doesn't matter. If people are listening to this who don't meditate, start by just setting a timer for 5 minutes, closing your eyes, not moving, and don't open your eyes until 5 minutes as the timer goes off. Just sit there and breathe. And if you have thoughts, great. Notice the thoughts, say thank you thoughts, and then like move on. but just start to get in the space where you're cutting out all the input and seeing what comes up, what's there, what's underneath the surface already. And so meditation is a huge part of my life. Another thing is movement of some kind, going to the gym or going surfing or just stretching, doing yoga, like whatever it is. If I'm not moving my body, if I'm not actually like putting stress on my body in some way, challenging my body, I feel it. I get cranky. So meditation, movement of the body. And the third thing that is a massive component to me being able to show up in love is what I'm putting into my system energetically. And so that means what I eat, what I drink, what I consume as far as media, the conversations that I surround myself in, what I'm actually inputting into my system is the discernment of that. And one of the hardest ones is food, right? Because when I get into that stress space, like I've been this past week, my body wants something that will just like physically release endorphins, like sugar, or give me some density and weight to it so that I'm not floating in my head and want like a lot of meat. And I'm not vegan, but I eat mostly vegan until my body's like, oh, I want something. But I notice like when I'm in stress spaces, like things that I don't normally eat, my body starts wanting. And so input of energy, movement of body, and meditation are the three things that lead me into my most successful life.
I love it, man. So I wrap up all these interviews in a similar way, and that's with 5 rapid fire questions. But before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? How do they consume your content beyond the video I'm sure they've already watched? Where do they do a deep dive on Adam?
Well, there's several places. I have a lot of online real estate. And so you can go to adamroa.com. You can go to theartofchoosinglove.com to watch the show. And you can follow my podcast, The Deep Dive with Adam Roa. That's available SoundCloud, iTunes, everywhere. And then lastly, social medias. The primary social medias that I use are YouTube. My channel is Adam Roa. Instagram, adam.roa. That's ROA. And Facebook, Adam Roa.
Awesome, man. So guys, definitely go check out his stuff to do a deep dive and understand what he's all about. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. So we're going to get into 5 rapid fire questions. Some are fun, some are serious, but I ask you this, answer with only one word or at the most one sentence. Are you ready?
I am ready.
So the first one is, what is your favorite smell?
Favorite smell. Sorry, I already ruined it. I already ruined the rapid fire.
No, you're good. You're good.
My favorite smell? Home cooking.
Nice. This is a 2-parter. So what's your favorite and your least favorite word?
My favorite word is love. And my least favorite word is can't.
Love it. If you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be?
I'd like to have dinner with Jesus. Assuming that he was a real person, which I believe, but I have so many questions.
Yeah, it'd be an interesting conversation for sure. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that be?
You are seen, you are heard, and you are loved.
And obviously this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement, so I wrap up every single episode with this one question, and it doesn't only have to be a sentence, it can be as long as you'd like. That is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth came the moment when my brain broke from everything going wrong and not going the way that I thought it would. And me saying, I don't know how to play this game the way I thought I did. I don't have all of this figured out, and I could use some help.
Awesome. Adam, thank you so much, man, for not only just coming on the show and sharing your message with my audience, but just sending out love into the world unconditionally, and really letting people understand that, loving yourself is something that we can't live without, man. And I just appreciate this time, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on the show, man. I appreciate you and what you're doing. Congratulations again on the success.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.